Hi and welcome to Our Gamified World. I'm Danielle.
And I'm Adam Brown.
And today on the show we talk about an app called SuperBetter.
Yeah, and SuperBetter is an app that's predominantly designed for people trying to cope with various personal problems, such as depression, mental illness of all kinds. And there's a really interesting backstory to SuperBetter, and that's something we should describe briefly, because I think it kind of makes this app almost unique in a lot of ways, because the designer is working towards something that they were personally benefiting from, and actually created something. Jane McGonigal suffered a brain injury, and she decided that there might be some gamified way that she's going to build an app or a process for herself to cope with her rehabilitation, motivate herself in her rehabilitation, also cope with the depression that came with that when things were getting tough. And from that, there's lots of stuff online. She's released a book called SuperBetter. There's a TED Talk, and now you've got the app there. And so you've had a bit of a play around with this. How does it work?
Well, at the beginning when you sign up, you get a choice whether you can choose a certain type of mental illness like depression or anxiety, or you can set it sort of manually. So you choose this, and then you set your own power-ups, you set your own quests. You can source friends to help you by sending emails to what they call allies. And the app, the gamified app, already has levels, and you earn sort of points or XP towards 4 categories. That's social resilience, emotional resilience, then there's mental resilience, and physical resilience. So it's all about building those aspects of our lives, strengthening those. And the power-ups, they're almost like little tiny steps that would help you become more capable of undertaking your quests or your overarching goals. I enjoyed using this app. I used it about a year ago. Actually, I think I even used it 2 years ago. I was undertaking an online certificate, and it was hard to motivate myself. And so I chose the sort of manual track, as you could call it. It worked for a couple of weeks, but there were some things that were lacking, and I think it could have been just some personal preferences. It's almost set out in a list format, and it would have been really great to see almost like maybe a map or something like that to physicalize your journey, you moving forward, or even physicalize the bad guys, because you can set your own bad guys. And for instance, one bad guy might be drinking soft drink. So you might drink a can of soft drink and click on the little button that says you lost to the bad guys. So I'm not sure if I can't remember whether that actually detracts your points, but it pops up and it tracks, like there's almost like a feed on the home page of the app. So it tracks all your progress, whether you've had power-ups or you've lost to the bad guys, whether you've achieved your quests, whether you've set some new quests. It really relies heavily on the user to manually set out their goals and the bad guys and the quests. So there's that leaning on the user, but there is what they call power packs, so almost like pre-written quests, pre-written bad guys, pre-written power-ups. So that's great, but again, the list format, it just didn't sustain it for me. I don't know why.
So there's a lack of visual customization, isn't there? And the avatar, for instance, that you have, you give yourself a name.
You give yourself a name, but there's no image, there's sort of no customizable cartoon character or anything like that.
I've found that some people, obviously as we've talked about in a previous episode, I use Habitica, and that does have the customizable avatar where you can suit up your avatar in whatever different ways. And it is technically sort of a list format, but there's a little bit more visually oriented within it. And some people probably, and I've found that some students that I've started, they've started Habitica, and then after a few weeks they go and find something a little bit more visually streamlined, I suppose, or bland would be the word that I would use, but that's a judgment. So I think a really key concept here is resilience. People use this a lot. In academia, I was doing some teaching and research years ago in children's literature, and people were talking about young people and resilience. And it all connects up with this crisis of engagement we've been talking about all year. And it's used very consciously in the kind of promotional web stuff around SuperBetter. They talk about resilience, the need for resilience. And interestingly, there was a student who recently tweeted to me and said they'd been using Habitica to cope very effectively with mental illness. So gamification and mental illness certainly do have a very interesting intersection. It doesn't have to just be through SuperBetter, and different apps will work differently for different people.
Well, I did have a friend of mine who undertook the app. He suffers from depression and anxiety, and he used it for a couple of weeks. But he said to me, I found it just a little bit corny. These are like serious topics. These are serious issues, and I don't know whether I can take this app seriously, because it's almost giving sort of a light-hearted spin on something that's quite, serious, I suppose.
It's interesting how even gamification, taboo can kind of come up a little bit, isn't it? And it seems like this is, for that person at least, was breaking a taboo. And certainly a lot of people and SuperBetter and Jane McGonigal have great reputations. So it's only, a taboo is a subjective thing in part, but it is interesting that things can be seen to be sort of a sensitive subject area, and therefore how do you deal with and represent that and engage people in an interactive form in that way? And it's interesting that I'm even struck by the issue of, I made that kind of comedic overlay footage for our episode last time on Team Treehouse. I wouldn't do the same kind of thing for this episode, because it could be perceived, even if it's by a minority of people, it could be offensive to someone. So it is interesting when you go into the more sensitive areas, just how you gamify something.
Thanks for watching, and be sure to tune in next time when we have our Level 1 wrap-up.
Please feel free to subscribe below and send us a comment or a question.